So first I'd like to start off by saying good evening. This is my first Screen-O-Matic video. The date is August 21st of 2015, and this is for assessment techniques for Dr. Shahan. This is a video on the standard video notes that we took today in class. I am not going to lie, I'm a little nervous. It's my first video, but I'm going to try my best. As an idea, you said that we should perhaps do the video on our notes, and that's what I'm going to try to do today, although I can't think of a whole lot to say about them, but we'll see how this goes. So, the first thing I noticed is that, before that, after I took my notes while I was writing all this, I actually went ahead and put everything into subcategories of how they would fit best, and then I condensed them. So I had more notes than all these, but these are the condensed version of my notes, and there's one more page after that. But so first off, the standards is something that every educator teaches. Everything that an educator teaches should be focused around the standard. It is the focal point. That's what we're meant to teach. There are two different forms of, or two different ways that everyone might be taught is standard embedded curriculum, and the other one is standard centered room. Standard embedded and standard centered are very different. Standard embedded is when the student truly understands the standards and the academic vocabulary, which is also known as the language of the standards, or LOTS. And in order for the students to understand this, it has to be everywhere, from vocabulary quizzes to everyday rhetoric. Whenever you speak, you have to speak those words. That way it starts to get into their mind and they start to understand it and they can find it anywhere. And then once they understand this, they can understand the standards. And this makes teaching them the standards much easier because the students want to understand. They don't want to be confused. But standard-centered is very different. If you walk into a standard-centered room, you can look around, and the standards will be over there, and over there, and over there, and they're all over the walls. But if you ask the student what that standard actually meant, they'd read it off to you, but they'd have no idea what it says. They couldn't put it in their own words. So that's why those two are very different. By assessing the standards and then putting them in a logical and sequential order, teaching the students will become much easier because the students will know what to expect next. So basically, the standards did not originally come where everything was teach it in this order and here's the best way to teach it. It was more of here's something they need to know, and oh, here's something they need to know, and oh, that's something they need to know too. So it is the job of the educator, or perhaps even the entire school, to go in and make sure that they're teaching the students in the best possible order, that way the students don't get confused, and also to make it logical, to put all the little things in between that they're going to need to know. So whenever they need to learn fractions and they also need to learn algebra, well, it says learn fractions, learn algebra, or something along those lines, but it doesn't tell you they need to learn their numerators and their denominators and how to subtract and how to divide and how to add, or mx plus b, or things like that. It just tells you learn fractions, learn algebra. Or at least that is so far what my own understanding has been. Have I actually looked at them quite yet? Not quite yet, not all the way through. I've had trouble understanding them myself, and that's why we have to put them in orders. Because if we have trouble understanding them, then they have trouble understanding them. Okay. And then once we've done that, we need to make them user-friendly, which is the term used in the video. Make it so students can understand it, which is what this whole video is about. And then something they mentioned that I found really interesting and is probably really helpful is what they call the backwards design. The educator begins by looking at the standard, and then they assess the best way to go about teaching it. After that, my computer blanked for a second. After that, they assess the student's performance in the area, and then they break up the students into instructional chunks as needed in order to best teach the class. So basically, like I said about the different things involved in the fractions, they need to break it up into all the different things the students are going to need to learn in order for them to best understand the standard. After this, the teacher would give a post-test or other form of assessment to see how well the students are following. At this point, the teacher will determine if it is necessary to make any changes to the curriculum, whether that is to slow down, or to break a chunk into even smaller pieces, or to simply leave things as they are because the students are doing just fine. This process of assessment is known as formative assessment, and it drives all instruction. Formative assessment helps teachers focus and prioritize instruction because it's going as you're going. As you teach, you assess whether or not this is working, and if it's not working, then something needs to change. You don't just keep going because then you're just wasting time because they're not learning anything, and now you've wasted a week. There are many ways to do formative assessment, but one of the simplest ways is to just use a checklist. This form can be used by students and educators. Students can use it for actually I remember using them in high school or in elementary. Just whenever you make an essay, they have a little checklist. Did it meet this? Did it meet this? Did you remember to do this? Did you remember to write this? And so on and so forth. And that helps them keep things in order. And then with educators, it can be just a little checklist to say, does this student understand this concept? Do they understand this concept? And that can help you keep along. And if you realize that these students don't, but this one doesn't, well then maybe we need to try something different with this student. And then if a teacher works in a larger school district, the best thing to do is to go and get teacher leaders who can have meetings with the faculty to determine the absolute best way to present the standards. Then these teacher leaders return to their schools and discuss these ideas with the teachers in their respective fields. Therefore, all the educators will have a cohesive plan for teaching the students, because otherwise it gets confusing for the students because they're learning this in this class, but they're learning this in this class, and nothing is adding up. So I actually find that like a really good idea for someone who works in a larger district. From where I'm from, it wouldn't really be necessary because it's a very small district, but I can definitely see how that would be helpful. So this has been attempt number 1 at my first Screen-O-Matic video for Dr. Shahan's class, Assessment Techniques. And have a good day.